El paquete está listo. El temporizador está activo. The scream tore across the marble driveway of the Beverly Hills estate. Raf Karoun's hand froze on the door handle of his armored Bentley. 7-year-old Gina stood near the fountain, shaking, eyes wide. She screamed it again, word for word. The 2 security guards near the gate went pale. Blessing dropped the metal bucket she was carrying. Water splashed across the tiles, but she didn't look down. Raf turned slowly. What did she just say? Gina pointed toward the car. They said the package is ready. They said the timer is active. For a split second, nobody moved. Then the backup team rushed forward. 30 seconds later, a device was pulled from beneath the driver's seat. Not a rumor, not a misunderstanding. A real device. And if a little girl had stayed silent, one of the most powerful tech billionaires in California would have been nothing more than a headline. Before we go any further, hit like and drop a comment below. If you were Raf in that moment, would you have believed a child? Your engagement helps this story reach more people. Because what happened next wasn't just about a bomb. It was about pride. About trust. About a man who built an empire on artificial intelligence and was saved by a child who simply listened, and the woman who raised her. Raf Karoun did not build his empire with charisma. He built it with code. From a glass tower in Silicon Valley, his company designed advanced AI-driven security systems used by private corporations, high-net-worth individuals, and federal agencies across the United States. His flagship software predicted breach patterns before they happened. His biometric systems identified threats in seconds. His algorithms learned faster than human guards ever could. Government contracts followed. Defense infrastructure upgrades. Federal building surveillance integration. Airport threat modeling. His systems were marketed as proactive rather than reactive. Prevention, not response. Investors called him visionary. Competitors called him untouchable. Employees called him precise. He called it necessary. Raf ran his company the same way he ran his estate in Beverly Hills. Layered security, controlled access, minimal emotional interference. Meetings started on time. Reports were brief. Praise was rare and measured. Mistakes were corrected quickly and without drama. He trusted encrypted networks more than conversations. He trusted data over instinct. He trusted structure over sentiment. Inside boardrooms, his presence carried weight. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Numbers spoke for him. Charts, projections, predictive models. Every decision had backing. Every risk had mitigation. He believed the world was manageable if you built the right system. And until the day a child repeated a sentence in Spanish, that belief had never failed him. 5 years earlier, the system had failed once, not in business, in life. His wife, Ilara, had been diagnosed with an aggressive illness that no algorithm predicted and no security layer could block. Hospitals replaced boardrooms. Test results replaced financial forecasts. He funded research, hired private specialists, flew in experts from Boston and Houston. None of it changed the outcome. The night she died, Raf stood in a quiet hospital hallway staring at a vending machine, unable to process the silence that followed. Grief did not look dramatic on him. It looked organized. He returned to work within a week, expanded operations within 3 months, launched a new predictive threat division within the year. People praised his resilience. They did not see the withdrawal. He stopped hosting dinners, stopped attending charity galas, stopped allowing personal questions in interviews. Emotion became inefficiency. Intimacy became risk. He redesigned his life the way he redesigned software: remove vulnerability, increase control. At home, entire wings of the estate remained unused, rooms preserved like museum exhibits, closets untouched, photos stored rather than displayed. He did not remarry. He did not casually date. He tolerated companionship when it fit his public image, but never allowed it to penetrate his private world. Loneliness became background noise. He convinced himself it was manageable. He replaced affection with productivity, and over time, he forgot what warmth felt like without calculation. Kalira Vaughan understood positioning. She moved through elite Los Angeles circles with ease. Fundraisers in Malibu, art shows in West Hollywood, private investment dinners in Manhattan Beach. She belonged wherever wealth gathered. She was intelligent, polished, and strategic. When she began appearing beside Raf at public events, it did not look accidental. She praised his innovation during interviews, stood close during photographs, spoke confidently about shared visions for the future of ethical technology. To the public, they appeared aligned. To investors, they appeared stable. To tabloids, they appeared inevitable. Kalira did not rush him. She knew pressure worked best when subtle. She hosted curated gatherings and ensured he received personal invitations. She positioned herself as someone who understood the demands of power, someone who would not slow him down, someone who would enhance his influence. Behind closed doors, she spoke of long-term partnership, of merging influence, of building a legacy together. Raf did not reject her, but he did not fully invite her in. He kept conversations controlled, emotional disclosures minimal, physical closeness measured. Kalira noticed. And she also noticed something else, the way his eyes shifted briefly when Blessing entered a room. Raf's estate operated with structure. Security teams rotated in 12-hour shifts. Housekeeping staff followed scheduled zones. Kitchen staff reported to a supervisor. Access points were monitored digitally and physically. Hierarchy was clear. Staff addressed him formally. Interactions were brief and professional. Blessing worked within that structure without blending into it. She cleaned 3 days a week. She cared for her daughter, Jenna, in the staff quarters located at the edge of the property. She arrived on time, completed her tasks without shortcuts, left without lingering. She did not smile excessively, did not attempt casual conversation, did not comment on luxury. Other staff members sometimes expressed quiet admiration for the estate's scale, the marble floors, the imported chandeliers, the fleet of vehicles in the underground garage. Blessing never did. When Raf passed through a hallway she was cleaning, she stepped aside respectfully but did not lower her gaze in awe. "Good afternoon, Mr. Karoun," she would say evenly. Nothing more. At first, he assumed disinterest. Then he assumed calculation. By the 3rd month, he assumed ambition hidden behind restraint. He misread her entirely. Her silence was not strategy. It was boundary. Her distance was not desire for elevation. It was protection. But Raf saw behavior through the lens of acquisition and intent. He categorized people quickly. Investors, allies, threats, temporary roles. He placed Blessing in a box without asking questions. And when Jenna screamed in Spanish that afternoon in the driveway, the box shattered. Because the man who trusted systems was about to confront the truth. Not everything vital runs on code. Blessing did not grow up around estates or executives. She grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Inglewood, raised by a mother who worked double shifts at a nursing home and still found time to check homework at midnight. Spanish floated through her childhood because her mother worked alongside women from Mexico and Puerto Rico. Conversations at the kitchen table blended accents, stories, and survival strategies. Blessing learned early that stability was earned daily. At 19, she fell in love with a man who promised expansion. He spoke about business ideas, investments, travel. He admired her discipline. He said she was different. For a while, she believed him. When she became pregnant, his ambition shifted into distance. Calls slowed. Plans changed. Responsibility felt heavier to him than fatherhood. By the time Gina was born, Blessing understood something clearly. Charm without commitment is noise. She did not chase him. She did not beg. She adjusted. She took certification courses at night, worked cleaning jobs during the day, saved carefully, asked no one for rescue. Every decision became filtered through one question: will this protect my child? The Beverly Hills estate was not a dream job. It was a strategic one. High pay, stable schedule, secure environment. She accepted it without illusion. Blessing approached the estate like she approached everything else, with precision. She memorized floor plans within a week, understood which surfaces required specific care, identified which security personnel rotated on which days. She respected the system without worshipping it. While other staff occasionally paused to take photos in unused hallways, she focused on finishing early so she could return to Jenna. Jenna stayed close when school ended. Homework was completed at a small desk in their quarters before dinner. Blessing checked every assignment, listened to every story, asked specific questions about classmates and teachers. She did not allow distractions. When Raf's meetings ran late and guests filled the estate, Blessing adjusted quietly. She worked around noise without complaint. She never interrupted private discussions, never inserted herself into spaces that were not hers. Yet she observed. She noticed how executives flattered, how investors negotiated, how Kalira laughed slightly louder when cameras appeared. Blessing absorbed information without reacting to it. She was not intimidated by wealth. She was informed by experience. Security guards sometimes attempted small talk. She kept responses short, polite, neutral. Professional distance protected her reputation, and reputation mattered more to her than proximity to power. The first time Raf tried extending conversation beyond routine greeting, she felt it immediately. "Your daughter speaks Spanish fluently?" he asked one afternoon. "She listens well," Blessing replied. "That's rare at her age." "It's necessary." Her tone remained steady. He studied her expression, searching for admiration or invitation. There was none. Blessing did not adjust her posture to appear softer, did not lean closer, did not hold eye contact longer than required. She respected him, but she did not perform for him. When Kalira began appearing more frequently at the estate, Blessing recognized the dynamic quickly. Kalira assessed rooms the way investors assessed portfolios, measuring value, scanning for influence. One evening near the garden terrace, Kalira approached her directly. "You've become comfortable here," Kalira said. "I do my job," Blessing answered. "Some people forget their place." Blessing folded the cleaning cloth in her hands carefully. "I don't." There was no challenge in her voice, only certainty. She had promised herself years earlier that no environment would pressure her into shrinking or performing. That promise still stood. After the incident in the driveway, everything shifted slightly. Security doubled. Media remained unaware. But within the estate, awareness sharpened. Raf began walking through operational zones more often, reviewing personnel logs personally, observing interactions he once delegated. One afternoon, he found Blessing in the West Wing library polishing a glass table. "You reacted quickly that day," he said. "She reacted quickly," Blessing corrected. "You taught her to listen." "I taught her to pay attention." He stepped closer than usual. Most adults ignored the guards. She didn't. "Most adults assume safety," Blessing replied. "Children don't." He paused. The statement lingered. For the first time, he saw her not as staff, not as background presence, but as a strategist of survival. That recognition unsettled him. Later that week, during a small private dinner, Kalira noticed Raf's attention drift when Blessing entered to refill water glasses. The glance was brief, but it was different. Not appraisal, not dismissal, recognition. Kalira's smile tightened slightly, and Blessing, sensing the temperature in the room without looking directly at either of them, completed her task and exited without altering pace. The estate still operated on hierarchy, but something beneath it had begun to shift. Respect was forming, and respect, unlike attraction, cannot be staged. The afternoon sun stretched across the Beverly Hills driveway in long gold lines. Raf's schedule was tight. A private flight from Van Nuys Airport waited. 2 federal contract revisions required his signature before midnight. His driver stood by. The primary security team had already cleared the vehicle. Routine, predictable, controlled. Near the side entrance, Jaina sat on the low stone ledge pretending to read while Blessing finished speaking with a kitchen supervisor. 2 guards stood near the front gate. They assumed no one understood them. They assumed wrong. El paquete está listo. El temporizador está activo. The words were sharp, urgent, not casual conversation. Jenna looked up slowly. She did not fully understand adult motives, but she understood tone, and she understood enough Spanish to know that the package and the timer were not harmless phrases in that setting. Her heart began pounding. She stood, watched the guard's posture, watched the subtle glance toward the car. Her instinct did not ask for permission. She ran. Raf's hand touched the polished handle of his armored sedan. He paused only because he heard screaming, not fear, precision. El paquete está listo. El temporizador está activo. Jenna's voice cracked, but she repeated it clearly. The driveway shifted instantly. One guard stiffened. The other took a half step back. Blessing dropped the bucket she was holding and rushed forward. Raf turned slowly toward the child. What did you say? They said the package is ready. Gina gasped. They said the timer is active. Silence hit like pressure. For a fraction of a second, disbelief hovered. Then training took over. Raf stepped back from the vehicle immediately. Lock down, he ordered. The secondary security team moved fast, weapons drawn, communication devices active. The two guards near the gate were restrained before they could reach for anything. Raf's jaw tightened. His systems had cleared this vehicle minutes earlier, yet a 7-year-old had just interrupted departure. Because she listened, the vehicle was swept again, this time manually. Under the driver's seat, concealed behind interior paneling, technicians found it. Compact, timed, real. The device was not sophisticated enough to evade deep forensic review, but it had passed initial surface scans. Raf watched from a controlled distance as the bomb unit secured it. His expression did not break, but his mind recalculated rapidly. 2 internal guards had facilitated entry. Access logs confirmed temporary clearance adjustments made within the past 72 hours. Not random, planned. The guards were transported in separate vehicles for interrogation. Jenna stood beside Blessing, shaking now that the adrenaline had faded. Raf approached them carefully. You saved my life, he said, kneeling slightly to meet Gina's eye level. She swallowed. They sounded scared. Blessing placed a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder. She heard what adults ignored. Raf stood again. For the first time in years, his security system had failed, and a child's awareness had corrected it. Within hours, federal investigators arrived. Phones were confiscated. Access codes were reset. Internal reviews began immediately. The arrested guards confessed before midnight. They had been bribed through a rival tech competitor seeking leverage over Raf's upcoming defense expansion bid. The threat had not been personal. It had been strategic. That realization cut deeper. Raf stood alone in his private office overlooking the city lights that evening. His empire specialized in predictive protection. Yet prediction had not come from code. It had come from a child raised to observe. He replayed the moment repeatedly. The scream, the translation, the freeze. 30 seconds had separated life from catastrophe. Later that night, he walked toward the modest staff quarters at the edge of the property. He knocked. Blessing opened the door halfway. You should increase security around her, she said before he spoke. He studied her expression. No fear, no gratitude-seeking, only calculation. I owe her my life, he replied quietly. You owe her protection, she corrected. The words landed without softness. Raf understood something in that moment. Debt was not emotional. It was responsibility. And for the first time since his wife's death, something inside him shifted. Control had limits. Systems had blind spots. But courage, when taught properly, could interrupt disaster. The man who trusted systems had just witnessed their weakness. And he was beginning to question himself. The staff quarters were modest compared to the main estate. Clean white walls, a small dining table near the kitchenette, schoolbooks stacked neatly beside a narrow couch. No excess, no decoration meant to impress. Raf had never stepped inside before. Now he stood just beyond the doorway, aware of the difference in space. Blessing did not invite him further in immediately. "Investigators are still here," he said. "I assumed," she replied. Her tone was calm, but her posture was protective. Jaina sat at the table coloring quietly, though her eyes followed every word. "I've assigned additional surveillance around this wing," Raf continued. 2 external units. Independent rotation. Blessing nodded once. "Good." He waited for gratitude. It did not come. Instead, she asked, "Were background checks rerun on all personnel?" "Yes." "Internally or third party?" He paused. "Both." She held his gaze steadily. "Then that's a start." Raf realized something subtle in that exchange. She was not impressed by resources. She was assessing competence. And she expected it. The following morning, Raf convened an emergency executive call from his home office. Full audit. Cross-division review. Independent cybersecurity assessment layered on physical security oversight. He did not delegate the briefing. He led it. "Redundancy failed," he stated. "That is unacceptable." Board members expressed concern about reputation. He dismissed it. Reputation follows performance. Privately, he arranged counseling access for Jaina, quietly covered medical evaluations to ensure no residual trauma, increased private school security monitoring, updated transport protocols. He did not announce these decisions publicly. He implemented them. Later that week, he approached Blessing near the East Garden. "I've taken steps," he said. "I noticed," she answered. "You didn't ask. I shouldn't have to." That response unsettled him more than any accusation. In business, requests preceded action. In her world, responsibility preceded comfort. He studied her profile as she trimmed dried leaves from a rosebush. "You're not angry?" he asked. "At you?" She shook her head. "Anger doesn't fix gaps. Action does." He absorbed that. She was not seeking emotional apology. She was measuring consistency. Despite increased protocols, something gnawed at him. He replayed the security timeline repeatedly in his office, analyzing footage, reviewing timestamps. The initial sweep had flagged nothing. The device had been shielded inside custom interior modifications that mimicked manufacturer materials, advanced, but not invisible. He stood before a wall-length digital display showing layered analytics, threat prediction probability models, behavioral anomaly tracking, machine learning recalibration. Every graph confirmed improvement, yet none of it erased the fact that a 7-year-old had identified danger first. That truth pressed against his pride. He stepped outside onto the terrace overlooking Los Angeles. The skyline glittered in the distance. Power, expansion, influence. He had mastered external systems, but internal trust remained undeveloped. Later that evening, during a routine check-in with Blessing, he asked, "Why did she react so quickly?" "She pays attention to tone," Blessing said. "People reveal more in urgency than in calm. That's something you taught her." "Yes." He studied her more closely. "You don't panic." "I prepare." There was no arrogance in her answer, only discipline. For the first time, Raf understood that strength did not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it moved quietly, consistently, without seeking recognition. Security upgrades were completed within 10 days. Federal agencies commended the swift response. The competitor suspected of orchestrating the bribery faced investigation. Externally, the crisis stabilized. Internally, something continued to evolve. One evening, a temporary system audit cut power to portions of the estate for 15 minutes. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across the west corridor. Raf encountered Blessing there unexpectedly. Dim light traced the outline of her face. "You're walking patrol now?" she asked. "I want to see what my team sees." "And what do they see?" "Blind spots." She held his gaze in the low light. "Blind spots don't disappear because you build higher walls." He stepped closer, though not close enough to intrude. "I misjudged you," he said quietly. "Yes," she replied without hesitation. No accusation, no satisfaction. Just fact. He nodded slowly. In my world, proximity to power usually has motive. In my world, she answered, proximity to power usually has cost. The statement hung between them. For a moment, neither moved. The tension was not romantic. It was intellectual. Recognition. Respect had replaced assumption. And respect, once formed, alters the balance of every future interaction. When the main lights flickered back on, illuminating the hallway fully, the distance between them remained appropriate. But something intangible had narrowed. Debt had shifted into accountability. Accountability had begun to transform into admiration. And Raf, who once measured value through systems and strategy, was beginning to recognize something else. Character. The confrontation did not happen in public. It happened where power often tests itself quietly. Late afternoon. The garden terrace overlooking the lower lawn. Staff rotated inside preparing for a private investor dinner. The estate felt controlled again. Kalira approached with measured steps. Her heels clicked lightly against the stone flooring. Blessing was adjusting table linens near the outdoor seating area when Kalira stopped a few feet away. "You've been mentioned quite often lately," Kalira said smoothly. Blessing continued folding the cloth before looking up. In what context? In protective ones. Her tone carried a thin edge. Blessing met her eyes directly. "My daughter prevented a tragedy." "Yes," Kalira replied. "And since then you seem comfortable." The implication hung there. Blessing did not step back. "I do my job." Kalira moved closer. Not aggressively, strategically. Men like Raf don't make impulsive attachments, especially not across lines. "Lines?" Blessing asked evenly. "Status, position, lifestyle." Blessing placed the folded linen neatly on the table. "I'm not applying for lifestyle." The silence that followed shifted. Kalira's smile tightened. "Be careful," she said softly. "Power protects its own." Blessing held her gaze without flinching. "Then it should protect well." Kalira turned and walked away, but the warning had been issued. Quiet, measured, intentional. 3 days later, the first anonymous email surfaced. It arrived in the company's legal inbox. Subject line, "Internal impropriety." The message alleged that Blessing had manipulated access credentials weeks before the attempted bombing. It suggested financial inconsistencies in estate supply accounts. It hinted at insider coordination. No evidence attached, only insinuation. Raf read it once, then twice. He forwarded it to internal security for review. Within hours, 2 more similar messages appeared, sent to different executive accounts. Same tone, same direction. Subtle narrative building. He did not confront Blessing immediately. He investigated. Transaction records showed no irregularity. Access logs confirmed no unauthorized entry under her credentials. Surveillance footage from the relevant dates showed routine work patterns, clean, structured, consistent. The accusations were crafted to plant doubt, not prove guilt. Raf felt irritation rise, not because the attack targeted his estate, because it targeted her integrity. He called a closed-door meeting with his internal compliance team. "Trace the source," he ordered. "Through legal channels?" one executive asked. "Through every channel." Later that evening, he found Blessing near the main hallway. "I need to ask you something," he said directly. She did not tense. "Ask." "There are allegations circulating." "About what?" "That you adjusted clearance logs prior to the incident." Her expression did not flicker. "Did the first?" "No." "Then that's the answer." He studied her closely. "You're not surprised." She shook her head once. When a woman refuses to be intimidated, she becomes inconvenient. The statement landed with precision. "You think this is personal," he said. "I think power resists disruption." He understood the reference without her naming it. "Kalira." He exhaled slowly. "I cleared your name before speaking to you. I expected you to verify first." Her confidence unsettled and impressed him at the same time. "You weren't worried?" he asked. I document everything, she replied. And I don't move in shadows. He nodded once. The conversation did not stretch unnecessarily. He respected that. But as she turned to leave, he added quietly, "You won't face this alone." She paused. "I've handled worse." "I know," he said. "But you shouldn't have to." For the first time, the tension between them shifted from measured respect to protective alignment. Not ownership, alignment. The forensic digital trace returned within 48 hours. The anonymous tips were routed through layered proxy servers, but the originating IP sequence linked indirectly to a public relations firm contracted under one of Kalira's subsidiary foundations. Not criminal, but coordinated. Raf reviewed the findings in silence. He did not explode. He acted. He requested a private meeting with Kalira the next morning. In his office, overlooking the city, he placed the forensic report on the table between them. "I value transparency," he said calmly. Kalira scanned the document. Her composure held. "I don't control every employee under every foundation." "No," he replied. "But narratives reflect leadership." She leaned back slightly. "Are you choosing her over me?" "I'm choosing truth." That answer carried no hesitation. Something hardened in her eyes. "You're risking public speculation." "I don't negotiate with manipulation." The partnership ended there. No shouting, no theatrics, just severed alignment. Later that afternoon, Kalira's access credentials to estate events were quietly deactivated. Externally, the change was subtle. Internally, it was decisive. When Blessing noticed Kalira's absence during the next investor dinner, she did not comment. But she felt the shift. Raf approached her near the entry hall once guests had departed. "The allegations won't resurface," he said. She studied him. "You handled it." "Yes." "For the right reason." "Yes." She nodded once. Respect deepened, not because he defended her, but because he did it without spectacle. Power had tested him, and this time he chose integrity over positioning. The lines within the estate were still clear. Employer, staff, hierarchy. But beneath that structure, something stronger was forming. Trust earned under pressure. The invitation was not impulsive. Raf considered it for 3 days before acting. He chose a quiet Thursday evening. No investors, no press, no staff beyond essential rotation. The main dining room remained unused since his wife's passing. He instructed the chef to prepare something simple. No spectacle. He approached Blessing in the west corridor near sunset. "I'd like to invite you to dinner," he said plainly. "As staff?" she asked. "As my guest?" She did not answer immediately. Her expression revealed neither offense nor flattery. "That's not appropriate," she replied calmly. "It is, if I make it clear." She shook her head slightly. "Clarity doesn't erase structure. I'm aware of the structure." "Then you understand why I decline." He nodded once. He did not push. 2 days later, he asked again. The answer remained no. The third time, he adjusted his approach. "I'm not offering a favor," he said. "I'm requesting conversation." That landed differently. Blessing studied him for a moment. What kind of conversation? One without hierarchy. Silence stretched between them. Then she answered, "One dinner." For clarity, he accepted the condition without negotiation. The night of the dinner, Blessing arrived on time. She wore a simple black dress, no jewelry beyond small earrings, no dramatic entrance. Raf stood as she entered the dining room. The long table felt less imposing with only 2 place settings. "No cameras," she said immediately. "None. No assumptions." "Agreed." She took her seat. Dinner began formally. Neutral topics, company updates, school improvements, security adjustments. Then silence opened space. "You don't like attention," he observed. "I don't perform for comfort," she replied. He nodded. "Do you think I perform?" "I think you've learned to." That answer did not offend him. It challenged him. "You don't soften your words," he said. "I don't sharpen them either." The rhythm between them shifted. Not flirtation, honesty. He set his fork down. I haven't had dinner in this room since my wife passed. She did not offer automatic sympathy. How long ago? 5 years. And you're still avoiding the space? I was. She held his gaze. Grief doesn't respond to avoidance. The statement was firm but not cruel. He exhaled slowly. I built more systems instead. To protect yourself? Yes. And did it work? He paused. No. For the first time that evening, vulnerability surfaced without calculation. After the plates were cleared, they moved to the smaller sitting area adjacent to the dining room. No candles now, just low lighting and quiet air. You think I misjudged you, he said. You did, she replied. I assumed proximity meant ambition. It meant employment. He studied her carefully. Why didn't you try to leverage the situation after the incident? Because my daughter's safety wasn't a transaction. The answer settled deeply. And if I had ignored her, I would have left. That statement carried weight. You wouldn't have stayed. No. He leaned back slightly. You don't fear losing stability. I fear compromising integrity more. Silence lingered again. Then she surprised him. I loved someone once who admired my strength in public and resented it in private, she said. He listened without interruption. He liked what I offered, not who I was. And I'm different? He asked carefully. That depends on consistency. She did not accuse. She measured. Raf realized in that moment that she was not drawn to wealth or recovery from crisis. She was evaluating character, and he wanted to pass. The space between them narrowed slowly, not from impulse, from alignment. He stood first, walked around the table without haste, stopped close enough to ask without speaking. She did not move away. Are we complicating things? He asked quietly. Only if you're unclear. I'm not. He lifted his hand, paused just before touching her face. She held his wrist gently. Understand something, she said softly. If this continues, it won't be casual. It won't, he answered without hesitation. Her hand released his. He leaned in slowly. The kiss was measured, not urgent, not claimed, tested. Her breath shifted against his mouth, but she did not surrender control. His hands rested lightly at her waist, firm enough to hold presence, gentle enough to allow retreat. She pulled back first, not to reject, to set boundary, earn it, she whispered. I intend to, he replied. They did not extend the moment further. No rush, no escalation. She stepped away with composure intact. As she left the dining room, the atmosphere behind her remained charged but restrained. The shift had happened, not explosive, not reckless, but real. Respect had crossed into intention, and intention, once acknowledged, demands follow through. After the dinner, nothing dramatic changed on the surface. Schedules remained intact. Hierarchy remained visible. Security briefings continued. But beneath routine, awareness sharpened. When Raf passed Blessing in the corridor, their eye contact lasted a second longer than before. Not accidental, not careless, intentional. He did not touch her casually. She did not invite unnecessary proximity. Yet tension gathered quietly. One afternoon in the home office, she entered to replace a stack of freshly laundered linens. He was reviewing architectural plans for a new security division. You're expanding again, she observed. Yes. To protect or to distract? He looked up slowly. You think I'm distracting myself? I think growth can mask avoidance. The statement held no accusation. He stood, closing the file. And what do you suggest instead? Stillness, she replied. Occasionally, he stepped closer, though still leaving space between them. You challenge me more than my board does. I'm not invested in your stock price. Her calm presence unsettled him in ways he did not resent. Desire grew not from performance, but from resistance, from the fact that she did not bend easily. One evening, after Gina had gone to sleep, Raf sent a brief message. Are you awake? The reply came minutes later. Yes. May I come by? Pause. Then you may. He walked to the staff quarters without entourage. No display. No announcement. She opened the door wearing a soft grey sweater and fitted jeans. No effort to impress. No guarded stiffness either. The small living space felt closer than the mansion. Personal. You still don't trust me fully, he said once inside. Trust builds, she answered. What would move it forward? Consistency without pressure. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I don't want to rush you. Good. He lifted his hand slowly, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. She did not flinch. You make me want to deserve you, he said. That admission was not rehearsed. Her expression softened slightly. Then, start there. The tension between them shifted from measured restraint into something warmer. Still controlled, but no longer distant. She kissed him first this time, not aggressively, deliberately. Her hands rested against his chest, feeling the steady rise of his breath before deepening the contact. He responded without overpowering. His fingers traced carefully along her waist, pausing when she inhaled sharply. No rush, no assumption, only attention. He lifted her gently against the wall, pressing his forehead to hers as if grounding himself before continuing. You can stop me, he murmured. I won't if you're listening, she replied. He listened. Every shift of her breath, every subtle movement. His lips moved slowly from her mouth to her jawline, then to the curve of her neck. She tightened her fingers in his shirt, but did not pull away. Heat layered gradually. Controlled, earned. They moved toward the couch without breaking rhythm. Hands explored carefully, learning rather than claiming. Fabric shifted. Skin met skin. Every pause allowed for confirmation. Every advance waited for invitation. When they finally surrendered fully to the moment, it was not frantic. It was grounded, intentional. She did not offer herself out of need. He did not take her out of entitlement. What unfolded carried depth rather than spectacle. And afterward, she rested against his chest, breathing slowly as the tension eased into quiet closeness. Silence filled the room, but it was not awkward. It was full. I won't compete with ghosts, she said quietly, her voice steady. He understood immediately. You won't have to. You say that now. I say it because I mean it. She lifted her head slightly, studying his face. I won't be secondary to memory. You're not. He did not speak in grand declarations. He spoke plainly. That part of my life ended, he continued. I honor it, but I don't live in it. She watched for hesitation, found none. Outside, Los Angeles traffic hummed faintly in the distance. Inside, something had solidified. Not possession, not fantasy. Commitment built from choice. He traced slow circles along her shoulder. Not out of desire, but reassurance. Tomorrow doesn't change structure, she said softly. I know. And we move carefully. Yes. She nodded once, because desire without discipline destroys balance. And neither of them intended to destroy what they were building. For the first time since the explosion that never happened, Raf felt something shift that no system could engineer. Not control, not dominance, connection. And connection demanded courage. The story broke on a Tuesday morning, not on a major network, on a fast-moving digital outlet known for exclusive sources. Headline: Tech billionaire's relationship with staff predates security breach. The article implied timing overlap, suggested emotional manipulation, hinted that internal access privileges were influenced by personal involvement. No direct accusation, just careful wording designed to raise doubt. By noon, larger platforms began referencing it. By 3, investors were requesting clarification. Raf read the article once in his office, then closed the tab. He did not call blessing immediately. He did not issue a defensive statement. He called legal. Prepare a factual briefing, he said. Deny? His counsel asked. State truth. Across the estate, staff phones buzzed quietly. Blessing saw the headline on her own screen before anyone approached her. She did not panic. She finished preparing Gina's lunch, then waited. because this moment would reveal more than any private conversation had. By late afternoon, reporters had positioned themselves outside the estate gates. Satellite vans lined the street. Financial news panels debated ethics in executive conduct. Some framed it as scandal. Others framed it as poor optics. The board requested an emergency video conference. Distance yourself temporarily, one senior advisor suggested. For stability. Raf listened without interruption, then responded. There was no misconduct. That's not what's being implied. Then I will clarify. Publicly. Yes. Silence followed. You understand the risk? Another executive asked. Yes. He ended the call without further discussion. Reputation built on control now required something different. Visibility. He walked to the staff quarters instead of sending for her. Blessing opened the door before he knocked. You saw it, he said. Yes. He studied her carefully. No one will force you into this. She crossed her arms calmly. I didn't ask for hiding. The answer steadied him. I'm holding a press conference at 5. She nodded once. Then speak clearly. At precisely 5 o'clock, Raf stepped behind the podium set up just beyond the estate gates. No script in hand. No spokesperson beside him. Cameras flashed. Microphones angled forward. He began without hesitation. 3 months ago, my life was saved by a 7-year-old child who overheard a threat others missed. Murmurs rippled. She is the daughter of a member of my household staff. He did not lower his voice. Any suggestion that personal involvement influenced security events prior to that day is false. A reporter raised a hand. Are you confirming a relationship? Yes. The word landed firmly. There was no inappropriate conduct before the attempted attack. There was no manipulation of access privileges. There was no concealment. He paused deliberately. My relationship developed after that event. Transparently, lawfully, respectfully, more flashes, more whispers. And I will not allow insinuation to tarnish the integrity of a woman who has demonstrated more character under pressure than many executives I've worked with. The statement was not dramatic. It was decisive. Questions followed. He answered without evasion. When the conference ended, the tone of coverage began shifting almost immediately. The narrative no longer focused on scandal. It focused on accountability. Digital forensics linked the original article's anonymous source to a consultancy firm previously retained by one of Kalira's charitable foundations. Not direct authorship, but strategic placement. When confronted privately with the findings, Kalira did not deny influence. You've aligned yourself beneath your status, she said coolly. I've aligned myself with integrity, Raf replied. Your gambling public perception. I'm correcting it. There was no dramatic ending, no raised voices. He ended all remaining professional affiliations. Board memberships dissolved. Shared initiatives terminated. Clean separation. That evening, media commentary shifted further. Some praised transparency. Some criticized executive vulnerability. But the central narrative was clear. He did not hide her. He did not retreat. He chose publicly what he had chosen privately. Later, as dusk settled over Los Angeles, Raf returned to the estate. Blessing stood near the balcony, overlooking the city lights. You spoke, she said. Yes. For yourself? For truth. She studied him in silence, then nodded. Power had tested him again. This time not through threat, but through exposure, and he had not chosen protection of image. He had chosen alignment with her. Respect deepened into partnership, not because he defended her, but because he did it without compromise. The lines of hierarchy still existed, but something stronger now stood beside them. Public choice, and once made, it cannot be undone. The estate felt different after the press conference. Not tense, not fragile, settled. Media attention faded within weeks, replaced by new headlines in the cycle of public distraction. Investors stabilized. Contracts held firm. Externally, the storm passed. Internally, the question shifted. What now? One evening, Raf asked Blessing to walk with him along the East Garden path. The city lights shimmered below the hillside, I want you and Jenna to move into the secured wing of the estate, he said directly. Not into the main house, not into spectacle. Into a private section renovated with independent access, layered security, and proximity to the central command system. Blessing did not react emotionally. She processed. That's a large step. Yes. Why? Because protection should not require distance. She looked toward the staff quarters in the distance. We are safe there. Safer here. She turned back to him. This isn't charity? No. Obligation? No. Then what? Commitment. He did not rush the silence that followed. She would not be moved by urgency, only by proof. The next morning, Blessing visited the secured wing alone. Wide windows, private entrance, updated surveillance access panels integrated into interior walls. Comfort without excess. She ran her hand lightly along the window frame, thinking. Security mattered, but so did independence. Later that evening, she met him in the library. You don't solve fear with square footage, she said calmly. I know. You solve it with consistency. Yes. Then show me that first. He nodded. No frustration, no persuasion attempt. Take your time, he replied. For the first time, he did not try to accelerate outcome. He adjusted his behavior instead. He began showing up differently, not in grand gestures, in routine. Consistency does not announce itself. It accumulates. Raf began attending Gina's parent-teacher meetings without media awareness. He sat quietly in elementary school classrooms in Santa Monica, listening to discussions about reading comprehension and math scores. He learned the names of her classmates, helped her practice spelling words at the dining table, read bedtime stories without checking his phone. When she hesitated before a school presentation weeks later, he arrived early and sat in the second row. No publicity, no audience beyond other parents. Blessing observed quietly. She watched how he responded when Gina spilled juice across his tailored suit one evening. He laughed, changed his shirt, returned to the table. No irritation, no withdrawal. He adjusted work travel when possible. When impossible, he scheduled video calls that were not rushed. Consistency, she had said. He listened, not because he feared losing her, but because he understood that words without pattern mean nothing. Gradually, the estate began feeling less like divided territory, less like employer and staff, more like shared ground. 3 months after the public statement, Blessing stood again on the balcony overlooking Los Angeles, this time not uncertain, measured. Raf joined her quietly. I've been watching, she said. I know. You didn't argue when I hesitated. No. You didn't retreat when it became inconvenient. No. She turned toward him fully. This isn't about security systems anymore. I know. It's about stability. He stepped closer, but not imposing. I'm not offering rescue, he said. I'm offering partnership. The word carried weight. Not dominance, not control. Partnership. She studied him carefully. You're not afraid? She asked. Of what? Letting us into spaces you closed years ago. He paused. I am. The honesty mattered, but I'd rather build something real than protect something empty. The city lights flickered below them. Blessing exhaled slowly. We'll move, she said at last. Not because of marble floors, not because of security layers, because consistency had answered hesitation. Raf did not celebrate loudly. He nodded once. Thank you. She corrected him gently. Not gratitude. Choice, and choice, when made freely, transforms structure into home. The secured wing did not feel foreign for long. It did not feel like relocation. It felt intentional. Furniture was arranged to suit comfort, not display. Jenna chose the color of her room. Blessing selected bookshelves for the shared sitting space. Raf did not override decisions. He integrated. One quiet evening, months after the move, the three of them stood on the upper balcony overlooking Los Angeles. The skyline glowed beneath a clear sky. Jenna leaned against the railing between them. Do you still build robots that catch bad guys? She asked. Not robots. Raf smiled. Systems. Systems missed that day, she replied thoughtfully. He did not deflect. Yes, they did. Blessing glanced at him. He continued, That's why I'm rebuilding them. Better? Jenna asked. Smarter. And with listening, Blessing added quietly. He nodded. With listening, the conversation was simple, but it marked something larger. He was no longer defending pride. He was adapting. Later that night, after Gina had gone to sleep, Blessing remained on the balcony alone. Raf joined her. The air carried a mild breeze. The city hummed softly below. You were wrong about me, she said calmly. Yes. You thought proximity meant ambition. I did. She nodded once. And I was wrong about you. He looked at her. In what way? I believed powerful men never change. He absorbed that without interruption. Why? He asked. Because the ones I knew valued control over growth. And I don't. You did. The correction was precise. But you chose differently. He stepped closer, resting his hands lightly at her waist. Fear makes control look necessary, he said. Grief made me rigid, and risk softened you. Truth did. They stood there without urgency, no rush toward declarations, no dramatic vow, just clarity. He did not save her. She did not rescue him. They adjusted each other. That distinction mattered. Their relationship did not erase hierarchy overnight. Raf restructured internal policies formally once Blessing transitioned out of estate employment. Documentation, transparency, legal clarity. He refused even the appearance of imbalance. Blessing pursued certification in risk management and later began consulting with his firm on behavioral awareness training for security teams. She did not become symbolic. She became strategic. Her insight into tone recognition and human behavior influenced upgrades in threat detection models. Raf integrated those observations into new system prototypes. Systems learn from data, he said during one private review session. And from people, she replied. They built side by side, not as spectacle, as function. In private, their connection deepened without losing discipline. Touch carried reassurance rather than urgency. Conversations carried substance. They disagreed at times, resolved directly. No silent withdrawal, no ego dominance. Love did not arrive as fantasy. It arrived as steady presence. 1 year after the day in the driveway, Raf hosted a small internal event for his company's executive team. Not to celebrate survival, to present reform. On stage, he spoke clearly. We focus heavily on technology, he said, but we overlooked human awareness. That changes now. He introduced new protocols integrating behavioral listening frameworks into security design. He did not mention Jaina by name publicly, but he looked toward the back of the room where she sat beside Blessing. After the event ended, he approached them. You've changed the company, one executive remarked privately to Blessing. She shook her head. He chose to change it. Later that evening, the three of them returned home. The estate no longer felt like a fortress. It felt lived in. Raf paused near the driveway where everything had begun. He looked at the space beneath the streetlights. 30 seconds had separated life from destruction. But that was not the most significant shift. The most significant shift was internal. He turned toward Blessing. I once believed I didn't need anyone, he said quietly. And now, she asked. Now I understand strength multiplies when shared. She stepped closer. You weren't saved, she said. You were redirected. He smiled slightly. By a child, and by humility. He kissed her gently. Not urgent, not performative. Grounded. Choice stood between them. Not obligation, not rescue. Choice. And that choice, made without pressure, became the strongest foundation either of them had ever known. The explosion that never happened did not define them. The transformation that followed did, and that is what endured. The upgrades did not begin with hardware. They began with admission. Raf assembled his executive team inside the San Jose headquarters auditorium 6 weeks after the anniversary of the failed attack. Large screens displayed architectural diagrams of next-generation security frameworks. But before presenting projections, he addressed the root issue. Our models predicted external breaches, he said. They failed to prioritize internal tone shifts and behavioral anomalies. The room was silent. He introduced a new initiative titled Human Pattern Integration. Instead of relying solely on access logs and encrypted scans, the new system layered voice stress analysis, conversational anomaly tracking, and real-time language pattern recognition. Not invasive, focused, context-driven. Blessing's earlier observation echoed in the design. People reveal more in urgency than in calm. Raf funded a cross-disciplinary research unit combining behavioral psychologists, linguists, and machine learning engineers. Federal partners observed closely. Pilot programs rolled out in high-security facilities in Washington and Austin. This time, the system was not built to replace awareness. It was built to amplify it. After the presentation, one board member approached him. This shift wasn't driven by market demand, she noted. No, Raf replied. It was driven by failure. He did not hide the origin. The explosion that never happened had reshaped an entire industry model. That was the first real impact. Blessing did not return to housekeeping. She did not retreat into private comfort. Instead, she formalized her insight. With Raf's support but not under his authority, she launched the Karun Ethical Leadership Foundation, structured as an independent non-profit headquartered in Los Angeles. Its mission was simple: train leaders to recognize blind spots created by power. The foundation partnered with mid-level executives, school administrators, and security directors across California. Workshops focused on 3 principles: listening without ego, accountability without spectacle, and consistency without pressure. Blessing stood at podiums not as someone elevated by romance, but as someone shaped by survival. In high-risk environments, she told one group of corporate managers, hierarchy can silence the very voices that detect danger first. Case studies referenced anonymized incidents, patterns, behavioral cues, courage from unexpected sources. She did not dramatize her own story. She structured it. Participants left sessions with practical frameworks, not slogans. Raf attended one session quietly from the back row, not as founder, as student. The foundation grew steadily, not viral, not flashy, structured, intentional. Ethics moved from private conversation into institutional practice. That was the second impact. Jenna's world expanded beyond the estate walls. Raf enrolled her in a language immersion program in Santa Monica that strengthened her Spanish fluency while introducing Mandarin as a third language. "You listen well," he told her one afternoon while reviewing her homework. "Language is advantage." She smiled proudly. He also introduced her to introductory coding workshops designed for children, not to push her toward his industry, but to expose her to structure and logic. She asked questions freely. "Can computers hear fear?" she once asked during a lesson. "They can detect patterns," Raf replied, "but they still need people." That distinction mattered. Blessing ensured balance. Dance classes, art sessions, playdates that did not revolve around wealth. Gina grew aware of what she had done that day in the driveway, but it did not define her identity. She was not labeled hero at school. She was encouraged to remain observant, curious, brave in small daily ways. One evening during a school cultural fair, she translated between 2 parents who struggled to communicate clearly. Blessing watched quietly. Courage had not been a single moment. It was habit. That was the third impact. The estate no longer operated like a silent stronghold. Security remained tight, but warmth replaced isolation. Unused rooms were redesigned into shared spaces. The long dining table hosted smaller gatherings. Laughter replaced echo. Raf removed biometric locks from interior doors that once separated wings unnecessarily. Trust did not eliminate protection. It rebalanced it. On a quiet evening 1 year after the failed attack, the 3 of them stood once more near the driveway. Same stone, same gate, different atmosphere. Raf looked toward the spot where his hand had once frozen on a car handle. 30 seconds had changed direction, but the deeper shift had happened afterward. Blessing stepped beside him. "Wealth without awareness fails," she said softly. He nodded. "I built systems. I ignored listening." She continued. "Power without humility collapses." He understood that fully now. "And courage has no age," Jenna added confidently. They both looked at her. She grinned. The estate lights glowed behind them, not as warning, as welcome. The real explosion had not been beneath a car seat. It had been inside pride, inside assumption, inside isolation. And from that internal detonation, something stronger formed. Not control, not image, not dominance. Partnership, purpose, home. And before we close this story, let me say this clearly. That day, a billionaire was not saved by armored glass. He was not saved by encrypted code. He was not saved by wealth, influence, or contracts. He was saved by awareness, by a child who listened, by a mother who taught her to pay attention, and by a man who chose humility over pride when it mattered most. You see, money can build walls. It can buy protection. It can silence headlines. But it cannot replace character. Systems can detect patterns. They can process data. They can predict risk. But they cannot replace courage. Courage is not loud. It is not always dramatic. Sometimes it looks like a small voice refusing to stay silent. Sometimes it looks like a woman refusing to bow. Sometimes it looks like a man admitting he was wrong. That is where transformation begins, not when everything goes right, but when you are confronted with your blind spots and decide to grow instead of defend them. Wealth without awareness fails. Power without humility collapses. And courage has no age. If a 7-year-old can interrupt danger because she was taught to listen, then you can interrupt patterns in your own life too. You can break cycles. You can question assumptions. You can choose integrity when it costs you comfort. And maybe the real question is not whether you will ever face a moment of crisis. The real question is this: when your moment comes, will you protect your pride? Or will you protect what is right? If this story moved you, take a second to like and comment. Share what lessons stood out to you, and subscribe for more stories that challenge, inspire, and remind us that strength is not about control. It is about choice. And every single day, you get to choose who you become.